Hello, my name's Bill Spencer. I manage the strategic customer relationships for Microsoft Teams Engineering, and today I'm going to introduce the United Nations to Microsoft Teams, the hub for teamwork in Office 365. Now, I'm just going to show a few slides, and then we're going to switch over to a demo with two of my colleagues. So we're going to show Teams and how to use it for the basic collaboration capabilities. Now, some of you may be saying, why do I need another way to collaborate from Microsoft? I have Outlook, I have SharePoint, I have Skype for Business. So why Teams? And the simple answer is Teams helps you save time. In my case, I save at least an hour a day using Teams. So I used to, for years, spend 4 hours a day in Outlook. And now I've cut that in half. I'm spending 2 hours in Outlook and 1 hour in Teams. And in that 1 hour, I'm getting more done than the other 2 hours I used to spend in Outlook. So I save an hour a day. And it's not uncommon for us to hear from customers that they're saving, on average, a half hour or more per user per day, because you're able to get so much more done. And really the simple reason is, if you spend half your day on half a dozen different projects, it's a lot easier to stay on top of those projects if you're using Teams. To take that out of your inbox where things can get very confusing, and to move them into Teams where there's appropriate categories or storage places. We call them channels or chat rooms, to save the various projects and topics that you're collaborating on. So, it's not just Microsoft that thinks Teams is great. It's the fastest growing app in Microsoft's history, which is amazing when you think about comparing it to Windows and Outlook and Explorer and Edge. Teams is faster growing. There's over 320,000 organizations already using Teams in 181 countries worldwide. Teams supports 44 languages, and that's growing to over 50. And there's already 116 customers who have 10,000 or more active users of Teams. So Teams isn't just a solution for small organizations. It's for organizations as large as the UN. And you might say, well, why Teams now? Don't we have all these other tools that Microsoft's offered in the past? But the nature of work really has been changing over the last few years. Typical information worker is no longer alone in their office with a PC. Today there's a greater emphasis on collaboration within your department, between departments, with outside constituents, partners, and sister organizations. And you also have more options for how you can connect with people. So people have more than one device. They'll have a tablet, an iPad. They'll have a mobile device, smartphone, that allows them to stay on top of their communications with their colleagues. And that's really where Teams shines. It has a great mobile application for both the iPad, the iPhone, and Android devices, as well as support for multiple platforms. So the same features are available in Teams on the Mac, Windows, and the web simultaneously. And then we have 95% of those features at least available on the mobile platforms as well, with great support in browsers like Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. So really, anytime, any place that you have an internet connection on any device with a browser, you can collaborate with your colleagues. And what's great is it's easy to sort of, with a very small contribution, keep the collaboration moving forward. And that's really where the design of Teams shines. So this is really my last slide. I just want to give you an overview of the design goals for Teams. What were we thinking as we designed this product? Well, we wanted to create a one place for all of your team activity that combined chat, apps, and meetings. And we wanted it deeply integrated with Office 365. In fact, we wanted it to bring Office 365 together in a place that was more designed, more intuitive, more convenient for people. We wanted each aspect of Teams to be customizable and extensible. So there's a lot of capabilities I'm not showing today, but I think you'll be seeing them over time as the United Nations adopts Teams. And finally, it's all based on the latest security and compliance. So what's great about Teams is you can be assured your collaboration will be kept confidential. So the data is encrypted at rest and the data is encrypted over the wire. This is really the highest level of security available from a Microsoft application. In fact, our acquisitions department uses Teams for acquisitions because it's the most secure way of collaborating. But also it supports the EU model clauses, GDPR, the relevant ISO and SOC standards, and we even support the high-end requirements for various U.S. government agencies like the Department of Defense. So very secure application. And with that, I'm going to ask my colleague Asia to take over the screen so we can walk through the relevant features of Microsoft Teams. Now, you'll notice that Asia is going to be demoing Teams within the browser, but these same features are available in the desktop clients on Windows and the Mac. So Teams is actually written as a web application, and then it is wrapped for the Windows and Mac desktops. So that's where you get this great consistency across all the different platforms. So thank you so much for showing this, Asia. And I just wanted to orient people to the top, to the main three areas within Teams, just so we're all on the same page when I refer to the different feature areas. So there's three, and you'll notice them as sort of three columns from left to right. There's a dark purple column, there's a white column, and then there is a large light gray area. So the dark purple column is called the app bar, and this is where the key applications are for within Teams. So there's the activity app, and you can think of that as sort of an inbox for Teams. There's the chat app, and I think most of you are familiar with chat, but there'll be some capabilities we'll talk about that are relevant for Teams. And you'll notice as Asia clicks on the different boxes or the different apps, it switches what you see in the white column and in the brown area as well, or the light gray area. The next app is Teams, and we'll spend the most time in Teams because this is a really powerful area of the Teams app itself. And then there's meetings and files. And notice as she does this, the white column immediately next to the dark purple column is changing. That white column is called the left rail. And let's go through the left rail. If you wouldn't mind, Asia, could you click on the Teams app? Great. So in the Teams app, let's start at the very top of the left rail, and that is there is a chat icon. If you want to start a new chat, you can click on that little piece of paper with a pen icon at the very top, all the way to the very top, Asia. There we go, that one. That's how we start a new chat application or a new chat conversation. So if she wants to have a conversation with Mornay, she can just type in Mornay's name, another one of our colleagues who's helping us out there, and you'll see it fills in, and she can just say hi and send that off. And so that's how you can always start a chat very quickly. Let's click back on the Teams app and continue down the left rail. We'll talk more about chat in a little bit. So there are three teams that Asia is a member of. There's emergency response, public safety, and training. Now you can tell a team because it has an icon on the left, and it has the dot 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 on the right. And the way to think about a team is this is a distribution list for group chat. So just like you have distribution lists in emails, you have teams in group chat. And you can have up to 5,000 people on a team, and there's no limit to the number of teams that you can be a member of. But most people end up being on, half a dozen to a dozen teams. It's usually not an unmanageable number of teams. All right, now let's click on one of these team headers to look at the channels beneath them. You'll notice that some of the text is in bold and some of it is in regular font. You can tell there are unread messages when there is something in bold. And you'll notice, why don't we click on public safety too, just to show another example of a team. There's always a general channel, and you could think of the general channel as almost a journal. It's the place where you start out. It has information about who has created a team, who has joined the team, who has created additional chat rooms, which we call channels within the team. So it keeps everyone in the team on the same page. Transparency is sort of a hallmark of the design of teams. And notice that the budget channel under emergency response is in bold. That's because there's something there that Asia hasn't read yet. So if she clicks on that, you'll notice a few things. One, there's a whole bunch of messages. The other is, notice that the latest messages are always at the bottom. And this is by design to save time, so that just like you read the text on a page, that where you're heading is always down at the bottom of the page. Well, similarly, it makes the messages in context when you respond or reply to a message, that you're responding or replying to the message that's immediately above the one that you're entering. So you'll also notice there is a last red line right in the middle of that light gray area. That light gray area that takes up about 60% of the page, that's called the main arena. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But notice there's a last red line. So Teams helps you save your place. So if you notice something is in bold, you can navigate to it and find the place where you were last reading, and then you can read down from your last red line. You'll also notice that under both emergency response and the public safety teams, that there are channels which Asia, for whatever reason, has decided not to make part of her favorite channels. But she can always find the additional channels by clicking on them, and she can just navigate over and click on corrections, and then she can go into corrections. Notice when she's added something that's not one of her favorites, that the text is italicized. Now, if she wants to save this as one of her favorites, she can just click on that star. And clicking on that star adds it to her sort of default reading list. If she wanted to, say, remove the onboarding channel, she could go click on onboarding right below corrections, that's right, and then click on the star at the top middle of the page, and that will remove it as a favorite. And notice it's now italicized. If she clicks on, say, the budget channel, then onboarding will get moved into that. Yeah, click right there. Notice now it got moved into the two more channels bucket. Now, what Asia's kindly showing right now are the more options. So see the dot, dot, dot? Every team has that dot, dot, dot obviously next to it. Many other elements of Teams has the dot, dot, dot or more menu hidden, and you just have to hover on the right corner and you can find it. And we'll go through these, but you'll notice the ability to add and remove favorites is the top command there, and she can click on that, and then budget will get moved as soon as she clicks on general, and it'll go from 2 more channels to 3 more channels. There we go. So that's how you can manage your, in a sense, your reading list, the top teams and top channels that you focus on. And think of a channel as being a project that the team is working on. It could be a topic for everyone to collaborate on, like the public safety campaign. It could be at a departmental level or a group level. It could be for a function within your organization, let's say for marketing or for design, or for finance. So there's, a channel or a chat room can be created for any particular purpose that a team is working on. And what's nice about, having half a dozen channels per project team is then, particularly on your mobile device, it's very easy to navigate to directly where you want to interact and then make a contribution right there without having to do a whole bunch of setup, as you often do in email, that says, well, the subject line might be thanks, but what I'm really getting to is the fact that one of the directors asked for, a report on this project we're working on. You don't have to do all that setup typing or explanation in Teams. You simply go to the team that you're working on, so the group of people you work with, and then the topic or project that the group is working on together, and then you make a contribution. And it's much easier to navigate on a mobile device than having to spend a bunch of time explaining why you're writing a particular message. So you'll notice in Teams that the conversations tend to be very short. The text tends to be on the shorter side than email, and it's simply because you've categorized the conversation appropriately. All right, so let's click on the general channel under public safety as I go through. I wanted to show one more thing. Yeah, okay, thank you for doing that, Asia. Now, you can also sort the teams that you're on. Generally, the teams are ordered in relation to when you join those teams, but you can strike your own ordering. So, for example, pressing on public safety on the team header, you can drag it up above emergency response and drop it, and now you'll see that you've set your own order. The channels, after the general channel, so general channel is always created by default. It's the first thing that's created. In fact, clicking on training, which is a team we just created, the training team, exactly, you'll see that what we've created is a general channel. I want you to click one more time just to show the general channel in the lineup. There we go. And you'll also see that there's nothing there in this general channel. There's nothing, a brand new team only has a general channel. And then the other channels are in alphanumeric order. So sometimes after a team has been going for a little while and you've sort of stabilized, with half a dozen to a dozen channels, you could then go in and number them by adding a 1, a 2, a 3 before the name of the channel, and it will create a particular sort order regardless of what the alpha name of the team or the channel might be. Okay, so let's now talk about the left rail. The main arena, the light gray area on the right side. Let's click on emergency response general channel. There we go. Just to have some content in our main arena. So a few things on the main arena. There's really 5 elements I want to talk about. So this is the third of the major areas, and I'm just going to go from top to bottom. So at the very top is a search box. So for example, you could type in the word budget, and when you do that, you see the results in the left rail that we were just talking about. So hit return, and what you see on the left rail now in the white column is all of the search results for the messages that include the word budget. There's no people with the word budget, but let's click on files, and you'll notice there's, in a sense, we call these tabs. There's tabs within the left rail, and here's all the files that include the word budget, either in the name of the file or in the contents of the file. And you can further filter those results by clicking on the little funnel on the side, and you could select a particular team. So let's just select the team emergency response, for example. And you could filter by file type like Excel, but let's not do that. Let's just click on filter with just emergency response just to show an example. And we see only those files in the emergency response team. And you can play with that, but it's a very powerful search capability. Let's go back to the search box, and let's backspace over budget, and let's put in a / just as it lists there, a / so you can see all the different commands. So for example, if Asia wanted to set her profile to do not disturb, she could just type in DND for do not disturb and hit return, and that will set her status to do not disturb. And you'll notice her icon changes. Notice her icon changes in the upper right there. That's her do not disturb. She could go back in and do a / and look at all the different, okay, she could put in away. There we go, that's another one. If she wanted to change her status, notice the status change, put in a / and let's do go to. I like go to. And she could then see options of all the places she could go to, so she could choose a particular channel like, oh, let's do the campaign public safety channel. And that will bring her into that particular chat room or channel. Great. So that's the top, the search box. Very helpful. I use that quite a bit. Generally, before I start a new thread, and we'll talk about threads in a little bit, before I start talking about a new topic, I'll do a search on some of the common words to make sure that no one's already started that topic. And okay, let's move off the / box. I just want to keep walking down. There we go, off the search box. Now beneath the search box is called the navigation bar, and it lists the name of the team you're in, and the actually right above that, the public safety is the team, and campaign is the channel or chat room. We used that star earlier. Notice the ... That's another way of getting to the channel level commands, and we'll go through those in a little bit. You'll notice that this team has guests. So Microsoft Teams has a great guest option. I'm not sure when the United Nations is going to turn on guest policy. Actually, I know Asia is a guest, so there are guests are allowed at some level. It's something that IT can control. And then the team owners, if given the permission to add a guest, could add a guest. And what's great about Teams is the United Nations can add 5 guests for every licensed user at no additional cost to the United Nations or to the guests. So if you had outside constituents or sister organizations, you could add them as a guest with the appropriate permissioning of your IT department. And as a guest, they have access to everything within the team to which they've been joined, and they have the option of communicating via chat with other team members, but all within a security envelope. They cannot see the whole directory, they can't go and see other teams, they can't see other people who aren't members of the team that they're on. They have other limitations in terms of what they can create, but guests can generally read messages, and if given permission, they can also access files, but that's a separate option. Okay, now immediately beneath where it says this team has guests is the tab line. So we introduced the tabs as I was showing how search works, and there were tabs in the left rail. Now these are tabs in the main arena, and we'll go through those in some more detail, but just know that in addition to the conversations, you always have a files tab, which accesses is the place where all the files that you're collaborating on are stored, and then there's other tabs that have been created, and we'll go through that in just a moment. Let's click back on conversations, and we can see that there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 threads that we're looking at. 2 of them have been created by me, Bill Spencer, and then 1 was created by my colleague Rima. And you'll notice that under each conversation, each thread, we call these threads, there is a reply box. So you can always add to an existing thread. Now in the Teams app, the conversations are threaded. In the Chat app, as we'll see in a little bit, the conversations are not threaded. We'll show the benefits of each. And notice how the conversations are collapsed automatically, and you can uncollapse them by clicking on that where Rima just clicked there, or excuse me, where Asia just clicked, where it says the number of replies and who all replied. And you can see that what's nice is Teams does a great job, usually with the start of the conversation, and then you can expand that conversation and see all the various replies. So why don't we click on that one more time where it says 7 replies, and it'll expand out, and we can see the whole conversation. And you'll notice these conversations tend to be very short, because that's one of the real benefits of group chat is you can keep the conversation, the collaboration moving forward with a very small contribution. All right, let's click on Collapse All and just scroll down to see the rest of these threads. And then, so there's always a reply box at the bottom. And why don't we reply to one of these? Let's click on reply right there, and we can say, thank you. And then why don't we do it? Oh, perfect. Now you'll notice Asia has logged in as Blair just for demo purposes. Her contributions are showing up as Blair. I'm going to ask my colleague Mornay to give her a thumbs up on that last post, just so that we can see what it looks like to be on the receiving end of a thumbs up. And there we go. And you'll notice the thumbs up is on the side there. You'll also notice up in the upper left corner in the activity app, there's a 1, and that's because there's an @mention for her, and there's there's her thumbs up. So like I said, that activity app is kind of an inbox for Teams. Let's click back on Teams. We'll talk more about activity in a little bit. I'm almost finished with the 5 things I wanted to talk about in the main arena. And the last thing is at the very bottom, which is called the Compose box. And that is the way to start a new conversation. So you can reply to existing conversations with the reply box. And if you want to start a new conversation, you can start it right in the Compose box. And Asia, could you do an @mention for Mornay? Oh, okay. Well, we hit quick. That was quick. Okay, there she's doing an @mention. Whenever I start a thread, generally I @mention at least one person, sometimes more. But that gives you a sense for how you can make sure that someone gets a notification in their activity app is when you @mention them. And @mentioning is an important part of how Teams helps you save time. So it's very important that you consider everything in Teams to be FYI only unless you are individually @mentioned. And often people will run into me in the hallway and they say, Bill, did you see that post I put in such and such a channel? And my request to them is always, did you @mention me? And if they say no, I'll say, oh, could you please do that? And it's very common, for example, for someone to do a reply. Let's just click on reply under your initial post about the question up above. There we go. And then do @mention. Let's just @mention me and type in Bill. There we go. Hit return. And sometimes people just do an @mention just like that. I often like to back over the person's last name. Let's do it one more time. Do @Bill and then backspace over my last name, which I think adds a little more informality. Oop, there we go. Just hit return. There we go. And then backspace over my last name. Perfect, and hit return. that type of @mention is a very common response within Microsoft, because what you're saying is, hey Bill, this this is either FYI for you, or please answer this question, or here's what we just talked about in the hallway and now I'm bringing it to your attention. Okay, so we've talked about the three major areas in Teams. The dark purple column is the @bar, the white column is the left rail, the light gray area is the main arena, and we've talked about the key features in each one of those areas. Now let's go about the type of work that you might typically do, and to do that we've got this training team that we just created, a spanking new team. Let's click on training and go to the general channel, and we can see that I created this team and added Mornay and Blair. So why don't we start this by going to the a couple things I want to say about the team. Notice a few things. Notice, for example, it does not include guests. So up in the navigation bar, there's no highlight of guests. Notice the tab line includes conversations, files, wiki, and a plus sign. So that is the way that you separate the conversation into different feature areas, different aspects of the conversation, and the default is conversations, files, and wiki. Notice that there are these buttons in the middle for creating more channels or opening the FAQ, and if you were the team owner, you would have an additional button which would be to add other members. But we will just show the creating more channels aspect of this. And then there is the conversation box at the middle, so at the bottom. So let's click on that and say, welcome to the training team. And let's call out Mornay. So let's do an @ and a Mornay. Okay, click on that. And again, I like to backspace just once over Mornay's last name. Okay, so Asia just lost you there for a minute. Okay, we had a little hiccup. Okay, perfect. And then click on perfect. Okay, that's great. Now, the @mention there is a live update, and you'll notice when you're on the receiving end that you get a notice in activity. You can hover over their name and see their contact information, which is a quick way to start a chat with them, to send them email, to look up their position in the organization. And if these capabilities are enabled at the United Nations, you can do a video conference call or an audio call with them. And you can also type in that box and do a quick message to Mornay. And notice this will be separate. So let's just type in a quick, hey, yeah, exactly, and hit return. And you'll notice that that is sent as a chat. It's not sent, it's not posted there in this. So Mornay is recognizing, is thanking Blair. Remember, Asia is in the persona of Blair. So, and also notice that when Mornay responds to the chat conversation, you see that helpful pop-up there on the lower right, and she can reply to that, and she can say, hi back. And that brings her right into this chat conversation. And, a few things, we'll talk more about chat. This is kind of helpful, actually, while we're in chat, just to differentiate it from a team. Notice that the conversation is reply and response back and forth on the right and left side of the main arena. The conversations in chat are not they're not threaded. Notice there's the helpful last red line. And also notice that there are across the top different kinds of tabs. So there's conversations, files, organization, and activity. And we'll talk more about those as we introduce tabs, but just I want to point out some of the differences. Also notice in the upper right, you can do the initiating a video call, an audio call. The person with the circle around it is for adding additional people to this chat. So she could, for example, clicking on that, she could add me to the chat. as well. And just type in Bill. And when she does, I want to point out what happens. It starts a new chat. So what's nice is, in email, sometimes you'll have a conversation and then someone will forward the email, and sometimes you're like, oh, I wish they'd asked me before they forwarded the message. In Teams, we kind of assume that what goes on in a one-on-one chat stays in a one-on-one chat. When you add additional people to the chat, it starts a blank slate, which I think is nice. Now, if you wanted to, you could go back, clicking on the back arrow in the far upper left corner. She could go back to the last conversation and she could copy a message and then post it and then hit the forward button. And then she could copy the message, hit the forward button, repost it so that I would know what she and Mornay were last talking about. But I like the way that Teams sort of keeps these conversations separate. Perfect, exactly what she just did. Okay, let's click back on Teams just because I want to keep going on Teams, but that was a helpful sidebar just to point out the difference between a chat and a channel. Okay, so we've started our conversation here. Now I'm going to show you a more powerful way of starting a new thread. And to do that, right beneath where it says type, there is, on the very bottom in the compose box at the bottom, there is an A with a pen next to it. And this is how you change the compose box to a compose form. And you'll notice it has a subject line. So our subject line could be, welcome to the training team. And then notice how it says, @mention someone. It has this nice reminder in the compose box to @mention someone. So let's start out by @mentioning, and we're going to start to type the word team. So @mention and start to type the word team, and you'll notice it resolves to the word training because that's the name of this team. So let's click on training. Let's click on that. The suggestion. Perfect. So now we are doing an @mention that will send a notification to everyone on the team. And I hit space. So you can individually @mention people, and you can also @mention the whole team. And let's put in the word team just to make this read properly. Let's work on the budget together. Great. And let's do a little formatting here. Let's select the word budget, and we'll use the formatting bar at the top. And let's click on the B for budget. You can underline it, however you want to format it. I like to use, let's select it one more time. I like to change the font sometimes. So let's put the color, the A with the underline, let's make it red. Great. And there's some other formatting options. You can notice you can add lists with bullet points or numbers. You can insert quotes. The open and close parens with the slash in between is how you can enter code snippets, which is helpful. It actually allows for larger messages because you can put large blocks of code in here. Let's hit cancel. There's different types of code that's supported. You can, format in paragraphs, which sometimes helps break things out. You can also make this an important message by clicking on the exclamation mark. And I'll ask Mornay to send a message in one of the other channels that we're not in right now so that we can see what it looks like to be on the receiving end of a message with importance. And then now when you're in the compose form, hitting return doesn't send the message. So let's hit return a couple times, and you'll see it adds spaces, which is helpful for legibility purposes. Why don't we add a little emoji at the bottom? Let's put in a smiley face using the circle with the smiley face at the bottom, and choose one of those that appeals to you. And now we can hit the paper airplane icon in the lower right. That's how we send a message when we're in the compose form. So you can see how different that looks to use the compose form. You'll notice a few things. There's a badge on the right side of an exclamation mark. So that tells people that this is an important message. There's also the text that says important. And notice that when Blair is on the receiving end of an @mention, her name is in bold and red. See up above there where Mornay did an @mention to her? Her name is in bold and red, and there is a helpful badge on the right side that looks like an exclamation mark or an @ sign. So that tells her that there is an @mention for her. So if you see an @mention for yourself and you navigate to the channel, you will you can just look for that red badge on the right side to figure out where you were @mentioned. Now you can tell you've been @mentioned in a channel. Notice in the left rail under Emergency Response Team in the General channel, there's an exclamation mark and a 1. So to be on the receiving end of an important message, you can see that that's what it looks like. And notice further below, there's another exclamation mark. That's where she sent that message. Let's click on the General channel up above just so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, just click on that. And there is, we're under the last red line. There is an important message and an @mention. Now, if you did, if you were not @mentioned, the important message would stand out a little bit more as it did up above. At the very top there, you can see the exclamation mark badge on the right side. So that's how it makes, you can use these features for navigating and quickly finding the right thing in Teams. Let's use the back arrow to get back to where we were. The back arrow in the upper, for the browser. In the desktop client, you'll see a back arrow which will take you to, okay, actually, there we go. Perfect. On the desktop client, that's a little smoother of a transition. So we're back where we were, and I was just pointing out how these various messages work. Great. Now let's go and create a new channel. And there's a bunch of ways of doing that, but there's this helpful button right in the middle of our main arena. Let's click where it says Create More Channel. Create More Channels. Right in the middle of the main arena. Perfect. Click on that, and let's create the budget channel. Perfect. You can add a description. I generally don't, but I think things are usually pretty obvious by the name. You should choose names that are so obvious they don't need a description, but that option is there for you. All right, now we're in a new channel, and you'll notice that there's those 3 tabs across the top. Because you created the channel is set as a favorite by default. Could you click on training just so people can see in the left rail, excuse me, yeah, and let's click on the left rail. There we go. And let's click on budget beneath it. I just wanted people to be able to see what happened there. So we've got a new channel. Channels are in alphanumeric order, and we can start a conversation here in this. Let's start a conversation by clicking on the A with the pen under the word start. And we're going to add a subject that is training budget. Now we've shown 2 examples of @mentions. I'm going to show the third. So the 2 examples are individual @mentions, which is always preferred. You can @mention an entire team, which is useful on occasion. And you can also @mention a channel. So let's type the word and then channel, and you'll see it resolves to the name of this channel, which is the budget channel. Clicking on that, and let's space budget members. Now, everyone who has this team, everyone who has this channel set as a favorite will receive a notification when you do a @channel. So people who do not have the channel as a favorite will not get a notification, though they still may be on the team. colon, please review and comment on my proposed budget. I'd like Mornay to approve it by next Friday. Or let's just say by the 15th. Perfect. Now let's attach our budget documents. And to do this, we're going to go to the paperclip icon. And notice we have options to upload from our computer, to upload from OneDrive, to pull from Teams or channels, or to look at our recent files. Let's click on Upload from my computer. And let's bring up the project budget and the project timeline. Let's select two files here and open. And notice there's a light green status bar underneath those files. So wait for that light green status bar to finish before you hit the paper airplane icon to send this item. Now I want to point out that when you have a message open, you can also go to your file Explorer and browse, and you can drag and drop onto a message as well. Oh, I wonder why those didn't upload. Let's try that one more time. Actually, let's do the drag and drop method, if you don't mind, just to show the different options. So we showed one option. Let's try the other option. Let's go into the File Explorer, go to the desktop, and you know, we're in a demo environment, so it's possible that one of the settings is a little off on this because multiple people are working in this. So this environment is different than the environment you'd be working in at the UN. So you would not have the challenge of attaching files as Asia is running into right now. All right, let's hit the paper airplane icon to send it. Perfect. So we now have attached these two files, and you might look at this and say, well, this is just like email. You know, I can attach in Teams, I can attach in Outlook, but you know, this is different because now we're going to talk about the Files tab. And Asia, if you don't mind, could you expand out, maximize the browser view? Perfect. All right, now let's click on the Files tab right beneath Training in the navigation bar. There's our tab line, and you can see that those files are actually attached into SharePoint. So when you create a team, it creates a SharePoint share in the background, and each folder, each channel in your team has a folder in the SharePoint, and you can view this in SharePoint. So see right in the middle there where it says Open in SharePoint? Let's click on that and open the browser. And now we can see the view in SharePoint, which is perfect. Why don't we go up just, why don't we pop up a level, because I want to show in SharePoint that there is the folders for the general channel and for the budget channel. Click on Documents. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay. This is the downside of doing a demo in a new demo client is, you know, this is something you probably wouldn't see. If you could, yeah, just click on the folder. I think you clicked on Conversation, not on Documents. There we go. Let's try this one more time. There we go. And then notice that there is a general channel has got its folder, and the budget channel has a folder. So let's click on budget, and we'll get right back into that view we were just in. And now in SharePoint, there are more capabilities than there are in Teams. So let's click on the dot, dot, dot here in SharePoint just to do a quick comparison. And you'll notice that you've got things like version history, you've got alerts. Under more, you probably have workflow. So there's a lot of capabilities in SharePoint, but let's go back into Teams, clicking on the Teams, because a lot of these things are simplified. We have just the most popular features here in Teams, and what's nice is I don't have to remember a long URL. I can just go to the team I'm working on, say the training team, go to the area that I think will have the file I'm looking for, budget, and then click on the Files tab, and there I'll see the appropriate spreadsheet. And if I go to the dot, dot, dot on the far right, I can see probably the most common things I would do in SharePoint, but they're all right here within Teams. So for example, I can edit in Teams, I can open in Excel, I can move, copy, download, delete, rename, get a link, and then this last option, make this a tab, that is something that's only available in Teams. So let's click on that, and you'll notice that now the tab line, in addition to conversations, files, and wikis, which it had before, it now has project budget as well. Now you might say, why do I need these tabs? You know, this is just like, why don't I keep everything in a conversation? Well, imagine that you've got a new project and the project team is together in a conference room. Typically, someone will get up to the whiteboard and they will write down the objectives for the meeting or the objections for the project, and you know there'll be a list of key topics. And then someone else may get up and draw a timeline with key milestones for the project. And then someone else might write, you know, what the budget is in another. So those three sections of the whiteboard, decisions, timeline or graphics, metrics, those are examples of the kind of information you'd want to store in a tab so that it would be right at the fingertips of everyone on the team. And that's what, you know, this customization of this chat room or channel leads to, is a richer conversation, because you can pull in these elements and raise them up in prominence. So, you know, in a budget channel, it makes sense that you would have the project budget as one of your tabs. Now you might look at this and say, well, that's kind of squeezed in there. Is there any way we can expand this view? And there is. So right above the word edit on the right side are two arrows at the upper right and upper left. Let's click on that and it will expand this out. So what it does is it makes the main arena take up even the left rail so you can see everything related to this particular document. And I can also have a conversation. So for example, right where it says, right where there's a little cloud icon above the word edit, clicking on that, it toggles on a little chat window. I can start a conversation and say, you know, @Bill, hit return. Please look at item 12. Is that enough money for legal? And you'll notice that that Asia, in the persona of Blair here, she doesn't need to put in any information about you know, she doesn't have to edit the document itself, and it doesn't need to do anything related to inserting some, you know, something inside the document. She can have the conversation right here on the side, and I'm going to quickly respond to that. I'm doing a little alt tabbing here over to my own instance, and just going to respond quickly in the budget tab. and you get a sense for how that looks. But this conversation is not now buried in this tab. If we click on Teams on the app bar, and then it'll bring us back into the let's click on the budget, or let's click on the Conversations tab, and you'll see the conversation that was going on the side is now working right here, is now available right here, and it's available for search. So why don't we do a search on the word legal up in the search box, and hitting return, we can see the post I just made. Clicking on that, it will bring us right into that conversation. And if she clicks on the project budget in the middle of the page, it will open as a tab with the conversation right on the side. So, Teams keeps all your information right at your fingertips, and that's really what's so powerful. So when I talked about saving an hour a day, maybe some of you were a little skeptical, but what we showed here is the ability for you to find the context that you might not have had in, say, SharePoint. I can see who created the document when, not just the last person to modify it. I can see who was involved in the process of reviewing the budget, and I can see the comments that were made. For example, there was a question whether legal had enough money, and that might be very helpful later when we run out of money and people say, yeah, well, we talked about that in the beginning and it was a concern. So what's nice is there's so much richer context here available in Teams, and everything's brought together in one place. The files, the conversations. You can use, you can view these graphics fast without opening the file, for example. And it's just a very powerful way of managing information for projects and topics that a team is collaborating on. So let's toggle the chat window off by clicking on the chat icon again in the upper, there we go, right there. Yeah, so we toggled that off. And now I'm going to show how you can add another tab. So let's click on the plus icon. So that plus icon is where we add additional tabs. And you'll notice our options here include SharePoint, Excel, Planner, Power BI, great for including metrics, PowerPoint, SharePoint. So for example, if there's a SharePoint share associated with this project and I wanted to access that, I could bring that in. Let's click back. I just want to, this is how you could add in additional SharePoint shares, additional wikis, Word. Let's click on PowerPoint and let's find the project timeline. See, it's right there. Now before you click on that, but let's replace the word PowerPoint with timeline. And I think it's always important to have tab names that make sense for the whole team. And then click Save. That's perfect. And now you'll see that it adds this tab for the project timeline. Now, over time, the timeline might become more important than the project budget. So you can arrange these tabs, and when you do this, everyone sees these tabs in the same order. So let's drag the word timeline up in front of the word wiki, for example. Let's just click on timeline and drag it. There we go. Perfect. Drag it up. Now, conversations and files are always the first two tabs, but you can rearrange these tabs. And I want to just point out something out. No one else sees the channels that you've set as a favorite. So you get, in the left rail, you can customize that order in the way that you see it. Now the channels are always in this alphanumeric order after the word general, but your lineup of channels is just for you. If you do an @mention, you see something different than other people, because if they're on the receiving end of the @mention, it's in bold and red. You see it in sort of a different font. It's sort of a light blue, a clickable blue, if you will. But the tabs are something that everyone sees, and in the order. And what we do at Microsoft is often we'll have team meetings, and we will just walk through the tabs and we'll put in comments about key decisions we've made. Another way that people capture decisions is they rename the Wiki tab to be the Decisions tab. So let's click on the word Wiki, and Wiki is like OneNote. It's kind of a simplified version of OneNote. And I always like to rename Wiki. Let's click on the little caret next to the word Wiki. And let's rename it, and let's call it Decisions. Sometimes people put other things like policy. They might call it policy. And you can always add additional ones. But what's great about this is you can capture decisions. You can do @mentions right here within Wiki that will send a notification to the person's activity app. And then you may have the option, if it's enabled by your administrator, to add OneNote as well as an option. So this is a quick overview of tabs. And again, think of them as sections of a whiteboard in a project room. And if you've got a really important project, sometimes people even will write on the whiteboard, do not erase. And this will be a whiteboard that is used for the project team. Well, you've got this virtual project room, conference room here in Teams that you can customize for your particular project. And just to sort of make that point, notice our tabs now include conversations, files, timeline, decisions, and project budget. If we click on the general channel in the left rail for training, clicking on the general channel, there we go. Notice that the tabs are files and Wiki, conversations, files, and Wiki. We've only customized our budget channel. We haven't changed any other channel. So I've dived deep in on Teams. We've just got a little bit of time left here. I'm now going to focus on chat. Let's click on chat, the chat app in the upper in the app bar. There we go. And I'm going to talk a little bit about chat. So we've got a group chat going here. So you could say something like, at Bill, do you have any training material for training? There we go. And hit return. And then I can attach it. Now, when I do an attachment here, I'm attaching into OneDrive. So everything that's available in SharePoint and OneDrive, I can access under the Files tab. I can also rename this chat. So clicking on the pen in the top, I can rename this as, let's call this Training Leadership, for the training leadership team, and hit return, and I've got chat. In the activity app, so chat's pretty straightforward. I think most people understand how that works. Quickly looking at the activity app.
Hey Bill, I'm so sorry. I really have to stop. I've got my customers waiting for me.
All right.
Hopefully we can chop off the recording. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
Let's wrap up. So go ahead and drop Asia. Mornay, could you pick up? Could you present instead? I just want to show two more aspects of the product. So Asia, if you could drop off, Mornay could pick up.
Hey Bill, could you just make me a presenter?
Of course. Thank you for your patience. We're talking about how to set this training up, and that went a little deep into our time here. So I appreciate Asia staying on as long as she did. She had bumped up against another meeting, and as I got into my demo, I kind of forgot that she had that time constraint. So Thank you for understanding. All right, so now we've got the training leadership team, which Asia created. For example, if Mornay wanted to add his own response here, he could click on the paperclip icon for a new chat down at the bottom. And Mornay, you're able to hear me, okay?
Yes, I am, Bo. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I can.
If you could click on the paperclip icon at the bottom.
Will do. Let me just share my screen out there.
Perfect. There we go. Great. And let's upload a file from your computer as an attachment. Or actually, we could just pull it from OneDrive. Well, grab whatever you'd like. That's fine. Let's grab the why don't we grab that PDF? There we go. And let's attach that. Again, you'll notice the light green status bar at the bottom. And you could say, you know, at Blair, what about presenting this material? And you'll notice I consistently always recommend, you know, you at mention even in chat in addition to channels. And hit return or hit the paper airplane icon to send. That's perfect. So now I just want to point out where this file is stored. So we talked about where SharePoints are stored. Excuse me, in the Teams app, your files are stored in the SharePoint that was created when you created the team. Let's click on the Files app, and I want to show a few things. I'm sorry, the Files app in the app bar. So yes, just like in Teams, there's a tab and the file is there. Now let's look at this Files app for a second. What's cool about this is if I click on the Microsoft, so we have recent Microsoft Teams, downloads, and OneDrive. Let's click on Microsoft Teams, and what's cool about this is I can see all of the files in all of the teams and all the channels I have access to. So this is a really powerful way of seeing all this information. And notice that 22 minutes ago, Blair uploaded this project budget and the project timeline. And if you manage multiple teams, and documents are a key aspect of what that team does, looking here in the project, looking here in Microsoft Teams under the Files app, you can see all of the documents. And it's a quick way of getting a status on various documents as they work through the collaborations on all the various teams that you might be managing or might be a member of. So in addition to search, this is a really useful way of, it's almost like a heat map of what work is being done across your organization. But let's click on the OneDrive because I want to emphasize that in chat, your conversations are stored in a folder under your OneDrive for Business called Microsoft Teams Chat Files. And clicking on that, you can see all of the documents that you've shared. Now, if someone has shared a file with you, it won't show up here. It'll show up in Teams in the appropriate chat. But what's important is that only the people with whom you've shared a file, they have access to this. And you can always find these documents here in your Files app under OneDrive in the Microsoft Teams Chat Files folder in OneDrive. All right, well, let's click back on chat. There's another feature that I want to show quickly, and that is, click on the training leadership team, and let's say that you wanted to come back to this later. Why don't you bookmark Blair's question? And I'll often do this while I am working in on my mobile device, say during a commute or something along those lines, I will bookmark items, and these are called saving items. Clicking on them, there is a little bookmark that's added. Only you can see your bookmarks, no one else can. Let's click on another conversation. Let's go to the one with Rima in it as well. And let's bookmark another one of these items. Let's bookmark Spencer Bullock's comment. And again, this is the kind of thing I'll often do on my mobile device. And then when I get to my desktop, I'll go and see what items I've bookmarked. And to do that, they're called saved items. I'll go up to my profile picture in the upper right, and clicking on that, there is an item called saved. Clicking on saved, I can see the two things that I've bookmarked, and then I can uncheck them. So in a typical day, I'll start out in the morning, I will go through my activity app, and I will bookmark items, and then when I get to my desk, I'll do that on my mobile device, and then when I get to my desktop, I will bookmark. I'll go through my bookmarks and uncheck them, which is super helpful. And then I'll go through my activity app. Let's click on the activity app, and let's show that process. So often I will filter these. These are all the places where people have responded to posts I've made, or where people have liked or @mentioned me. So these notifications are really helpful for guiding me through Teams. So what's important is, if you are using @mentions appropriately, you do not need to read every post in every channel on every team that you're a member of. You only go to your activity app, and typically what I'll do is I'll filter them and look for the places where I've been @mentioned. So I'll click and look for the @mentions, and then I can quickly go through each one of these. And why don't we just process through them, and you can see how Mornay is jumping from channel to channel as he is going through these. So if you are using Teams appropriately, you can save a lot of time, because instead of putting the burden on the reader to read everything, the burden is on the person who's posting a message to @mention those people who should be reading a particular post. Now, another way you can stay on top of things is you can automatically send yourself notifications. So clicking on Teams, let's send ourselves some notifications here. Now, let's say that the upgrade project, which is in bold, is something that Mornay is particularly interested in, and he wants to know every time someone posts on that channel. As I mentioned earlier, there is a hidden menu for the channel on the left rail. So hovering there on the right side, he has the option of removing this channel as a favorite. We showed that. Getting a link to the channel, which is helpful when you're posting and you want to send someone to a particular channel. You can edit the channel, delete the channel, but that last option, follow this channel, is super helpful. So let's click on follow this channel, and then let's click on a different channel. So what this is doing is it's now setting up a notification, and now I'm going to go to the channel myself, and I'm just going to do a post here for Mornay, which channel was that again? I forget which channel you followed. Did you follow the...
That was the upgrade channel, Bill. Emergency response upgrade projects.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's not one of my favorites, so it was missing for me. Upgrade project. So I'm going to say, here is a test for Mornay. And actually, I'm not going to do an @mention. This is important. I'm not doing an @mention. And Mornay should receive an activity post. You can see that there is a upgrade project, a new post there. Let's try that one more time. And every new message that is posted there will send a notification, and he will see the activity in the upper on the activity app in the upper right corner. So that's the key thing about following a channel is you can quickly. Oh, there actually he did get it. So right below where it says Bill posted, that is an example of because he's following that channel, he will get that post. Now I did a belt and suspenders approach by mentioning him, but he'll also get a notification simply on a post. So if you want to modify how your notifications come in, going up into your personal profile and going to settings and then notifications, you can set your timing. Now, one thing that is helpful, you can set, for example, when someone mentions you or when you're following a channel, do you want a banner and an email or just a banner or just in the activity app? And I'm just looking here to see under followed channels, see where it says followed channels, banner and email is the option, and you can change that, for example, to banner only or only in the feed. Another thing that I often do is if I'm on a key project with people and we're really focused on using Teams as our primary form of collaboration, I'll encourage everyone on the team to change their email frequency from once every hour to every 10 minutes. And the reason is because once every hour is usually not the snappiness, the quick response that I'd like to get on an important project. So I encourage people to set it to once every 10 minutes because then it'll pull people from Outlook, where most of us spend a lot of our day, into Teams where the conversation's happening, and it'll do it faster. So I think that leads to better adoption of Teams. And just wrapping up, if you agree with your project team that you're going to spend 1 week with Teams as your primary collaboration tool, and that you just agree that you're going to use it, and if anyone strays back into Outlook, you're going to charge them $1 or something, some nominal pain to reinforce the habit of using Teams. By the end of the week, not only will you say, yeah, we should keep Teams and use this for our project, but you're going to get other projects that people are working on, and they'll bring Teams to those project teams as well. And the reason is because it saves time. So thank you all for your time today, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for putting up with Asia logging in as Blair, and then us having to transition from Asia over to Mornay. But we wanted to get this overview of Teams to our friends at the United Nations because we know it's going to be a real benefit to you, and we hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, your colleagues in IT will be happy to provide additional information for you. Thank you all very much. I hope you find as much time savings as we have at Microsoft.